Welcome back, friends, to another installment of working on the Toyota Tundra, the 2018 version. We are going to install the air lift load lifter Ultimate 5000 airbag system into the truck here to help us manage these heavier loads with the larger trailers, or really any trailer. Let me give you just a quick snapshot of the current configuration that this truck is in. I'm going to tell you here why I decided it was necessary to install them here on my truck. Okay, so I apologize for the poor lighting in here, but it was -8 degrees outside this morning, so I'm not going to open these garage doors to let any extra light in here, and this is the best I can do. Here's a quick clip of this particular truck with my new trailer mounted on it with no weight on the truck at all. Now here we are back inside the garage, and this truck has a decked drawer system in it, which itself probably weighs, I would guess, 75 pounds or something like that, maybe a little more. And I've taken most of my equipment out of the back that I carried all the way out here, and most of the stuff that was in that in the back of the truck when I took that last video clip. So it's pretty lightweight now. I've got maybe 30 pounds of stuff in the back of the truck, but this is a 2018 Tundra with a 6-inch Pro Comp lift kit on it. And the suspension system on this truck is kind of complicated. And I've got such a good deal on this truck when I bought it a year and a half, almost 2 years ago, that, you know, having an extra suspension, a bigger suspension was fine for me. It came with the 35-inch tires, the wheels that I don't like a whole lot. I hope to change those out at some point, but I don't mind big trucks. They're kind of fun. They're a lot of fun, actually. So it's not as simple as lowering the front suspension to even out the ride height. If that was an option for me, I would probably have chosen to lower this truck a fair amount. But the way Pro Comp designed this front suspension, those front coilover shocks and springs, the assembly is non-adjustable to any lower of a position. The adjustment screws are already backed as high as they can be. If I wanted to jack this truck up using that coilover, I could probably get 3 to 4 more inches higher out of it. And that's just bonkers to me. I'm not sure what or why that coilover spring, if it's used for 12-inch kits on GMCs or what the deal is, but unfortunately it's not usable, and the way they've designed it, you can't even remove, you cannot disassemble the assembly. I've talked to the techs at ProComp to change out the springs, the coil springs, for a shorter spring or a lower rate spring or anything. It's just a sealed unit, and it needs to either be gone in the trash or what. But in the meantime, what that left me with on the rear was the guy had apparently installed 3-inch blocks in the rear, and I think that's all he had. So when I got this truck, it did not sit level. When this truck did not sit level, the radar coming out of the front emblem, the front Toyota symbol emblem, combined with the windshield sensor up here, the camera in the windshield, it was causing a lot of errors because the computer could not detect the sides of the road, ride height. I mean, it caused all sorts of problems. So I got into a situation where I had to try to level the truck out, not just for aesthetics, which I almost couldn't stand anyway, but so what I did is I put a Toy Tech rear shackle system on the truck, and that pretty much leveled the truck out. It was an extended shackle, I believe at least 2 inches higher, 2 inches longer than the factory, which with the geometry may have lifted the rear end about 1 inch, something like that. But it more or less sat level at this point. As soon as I put any weight in the back, like equipment, you know, camping gear, snowboards, and all of my mountain gear, things like that, it starts to sag in the rear. If I put my empty trailer on the back, it really sags the rear. If I put any load whatsoever on the back or on those trailers, it's totally squatted. And if I'm gonna be trying to tow my little tractor now with this truck, it's just not gonna work. Fortunately, these trucks have a knob you can adjust the headlights to point them down a little bit to compensate so that you're not bright lighting everybody when you're driving. But what we're gonna try to do is install this airbag kit to level out the suspension, support heavier loads, and make this truck, even though it's pretty lifted, into more of a towing rig. The trailer I just bought weighs somewhere around 4,500 pounds. I also tow my camper with this, and it weighs somewhere around 7,000 pounds. Max gross weight when it's fully loaded with equipment and water and whatnot. So any of those 7,000 pounds or anything that gets close up to the 10,000 pound towing capacity of this truck is a problem for these springs. One fortunate thing about this truck is it's the limited version. So the limited comes with, I think a little bit lower gearing in the front and rear differential than what your standard trim package would do. It also comes with the transmission oil cooler and the trailer brake controller and the wiring for all that. So it does have the tow package from Toyota, so that was another added benefit to me buying this particular truck. I think with it being the limited with the 5.4 liter gas engine, it's somewhere around 10,500, 10,400 is the towing capacity, something like that. Okay, so real quick, now that it's empty, and we'll just take some quick measurements. I think these rear tires are maybe a little bit on the lower side, but we're sitting from the ground up to the wheel opening about 45 and an eighth, 45 and a quarter inches. 45 and a half in the front right now. So even now it's not really level. About 1 foot ride height from the wheel well opening to the top of the tire on this side. That's 12 inches over there, and we're sitting right at about 11 3/4 inches back here. All right, so let's take a peek at the way this thing is arranged currently. Unfortunately, there is a little bit of rust already, but there's those extended shackles. You can see, pretty nice, pretty heavy duty. And these look like the factory leafs all the way across. Okay, before dropping the money on this airbag kit, I was fully committed to replacing these leaf springs. Now you can see the lift block and everything down in there. God damn, those are some horrendous looking shocks too. So I had put in an order with Cruiser Outfitters for all new lift springs, shocks, U-bolts, and the whole works, because I was going to swap out this entire suspension on this truck. I got there to pick up the parts, and one last final check realized that even with the 2.5 to 3 inches of lift that those lift springs would have provided to me, I still was going to end up being an inch or so short. So if I had went with that kit, which was going to cost me about $1,200, I still would have needed like 1 inch lift blocks on the axles. So I hate that this truck sits so freaking high. It's ridiculous. I wish I could just lower it down, but because it has a 6-inch lift system on it, it's not just the coilover, it's the entire subframe bracket assembly that's 6 inches taller. So I would pretty much have to buy an entirely new suspension or somehow find an entirely used suspension in a salvage yard to restore this truck back to normal ride height, which is kind of where I would prefer it. But anyway, so instead of spending $1,200 and then still having to source some 1-inch lift blocks just to keep it riding level, and then still have to install airbags, I said, you know what, let me just hold off on the suspension kit. This truck is not intended to be a Baja racer. It's mainly made to haul my shit around. So my RV camper, now my tractor, and my trailers, car hauler, you know, pull other trucks, maybe pull some of the Land Cruisers or whatever down to Moab. So it's basically just a towing machine at this point. And so why spend all that extra money on a higher performance rear suspension when this will be fine and it would need airbags anyway? So that's when I elected to pay I guess it was about $500 on Amazon for these Load Lifter 5000 Ultimates. So as far as what comes in the box here, okay, nice packaging. It does have the optional onboard air compressor as an option I did not buy. My thoughts were I would support Cruiser Outfitters and buy a nice ARB air compressor that will serve for airing down tires and every other sort of trail work you would need. Probably go with the big dual motor unit, unlike the single motor unit that single chamber unit that I have on the Cruiser. So this is what the parts are. We've got our two airbags. The only thing that this didn't come with was this T-fitting, so I paid another $8 or $9 all on Amazon, available through the Airlift store. Here's your Airlift part number. And that's going to make it so that I can, instead of having two different airlines, obviously going to each individual one, I'm just going to tee them together and it'll be one port to fill it up. I guess if you have uneven loads, or maybe you're putting a big old camper shell top on the top or something like that, you might want to keep dual options, but I'm just gonna combine them into one. So we've got the saddles, we've got the mounting brackets, a whole bunch of hardware, brackets over the top, these kind of interesting airlines that have the Schrader valve already built in, and they're press fit into the tube itself. These nice plates with these recessed beveled holes, which are kind of fancy. And yeah, there's all your airline installation pieces and whatnot. So let's get this thing installed. All right, so there's two things that I was kind of concerned with. Is on some of the reviews, they state that this internal jounce bumper, which I'm not really sure is a real word, they tend to be bottoming out on when they're riding around with almost no load in the back. It's recommended to keep at least 5 PSI in these things at all times. It's probably a good idea. A friend of mine runs these on his 3500 Duramax, and he said he keeps 10 in there. And then he said his magical number is 38 PSI for hauling his big ass fifth wheel and stuff. So my concern was compromising ride comfort when it's at the lowest pressure setting. It's bouncing off of the internal bounce jumper / jounce bumper. So I'm hoping to not encounter that, and I think in my case, I'm gonna benefit from having this additional rear lift shackles that'll actually have that space a little bit larger. Well, that being the case, most of the types that you look at have a bit of a different style. They have a bellows type of thing, and they kind of expand and contract. You can compress them a lot. And this one, it doesn't. It's just got these clamped on, crimped on stainless steel rings and a single airbag. It's kind of like, well, I sure hope it goes high enough. I'm sure it will, but 100 PSI max is what you can put on these things, but let's just pressurize this thing and see about how high up it goes. Should wear my safety glasses. Feels pretty darn full. So you're not getting a whole lot of additional ride height. So there's kind of in the full compressed position. Let's take some measurements real quick. Or with no pressure in it, it's right at about 5.5 inches from surface to surface. We're down to about 4 1/4 inches. And then we'll measure it with the pressure in there. Right at about 6 3/4 of an inch. So you're getting about, you're only getting about an inch of additional upward movement. So something to keep in mind, and I hope it works out in my case. I don't know if that means because this was designed for this year era of Tundra, if this thing's going to be extended all the time, and if that's going to long-term be problematic or what. But that was one consideration I had, was in the future perhaps having to install some sort of spacer or something like that here in the installation configuration. So let's find out. All right, so we're getting there. We got one side done and faced a couple little challenges that maybe will help you as a tip. Okay, so the first problem I ran into is just the fact that these upper plates there, you can see how much this one is kind of curving, and that's fine because it's helping pull that upper plate to the outboard side of the truck. So at first, the biggest problem and frustration I had with it was this thing was just kind of snugged down first, and then I got back here and started putting this one in, and you can see there is no extra lip. What that wanted to do was it wanted to slide right off, pull right off. And I feel like I should have been able to tighten that up a lot more, but I just didn't want, every time you tighten it down more, it tries to pull itself away from the truck's frame rail. So it's not the greatest design in my opinion, but it seems to work. Other thing is, don't install your nipple, your airline nipple at the top until it's installed in the truck. You can see how much I cut a bunch of the top of these U-bolts off. Right about here. And so I'm gonna mark those up there, cut those off, and then I don't have to spend 7 minutes in there ratcheting those down because I don't have an electric ratchet and there's no space to get a gun in there. That's really the only key thing here is this is going to be forward. You put some Loctite on all of these screws. Just blue Loctite. I would put red if I had it. Now this is going to be the inboard side. A little bit of Loctite on these guys too. Yeah, that ought to do. Okay, so now we're pictorially correct. Like I said, the air line goes in the forward end of that slot because the hole that it goes into is that hole there. There you go. That will marry up with that hole there. It seems like with 3/4 inch on the other one, we had plenty of room. Underneath the frame of the truck to try to get this thing started, that is not going to work either. Mainly because there's a the brake controller or something is mounted right here. So on that side, you got to contend, on the right side of the truck, you got to contend with the exhaust system being in the way. On this side, you got to contend with this random ass thing being in the way. It's probably what these two things are bolted on right here. See that awesome thing? Totally in your way. Pretty tall is the problem. And on the other side, I just don't think I had the room. I tried. Didn't have the room to compress the airbag enough to get it situated in here. This side, for some damn reason, seems to have a little bit more, like a 1/2 inch more wiggle room on that. So maybe we'll get lucky here. One small task for having to back up 6 different steps. Look at that! Look at that! Would you look at that? Oh, would you just look at it? Perfect. Okay, it's time to install the wheels back on and test this bitch out. All right, we got her installed. So, as in the instructions it says, you know, just use a razor knife, a razor blade. Happen to have these handy little Irwins. And I elected to try to use that to feed through to keep the debris out from the open end instead of doing it that way. And so this is how much excess I'm left with, about 4 or 5 feet with that intact in case maybe I got to do a repair or something in the future. Now, routing it underneath was super easy, but here's where I chose to mount the fill port. I just figured somewhere somewhat out of the way of boots knocking things off. I didn't want to put it right here and risk having it stepped on or something, so I figure tucked up in that corner is as good a place as any. Threaded it out quite a bit just so that I had enough room to get the cap on so that those stay secure. All right, now underneath, there's that T coming in from the backside, and then there's a bunch of nice locations to zip tie the passenger side too, all the way up and along the back of the truck. Feed it through the frame, straightforward, keeping it away from the exhaust pipes, obviously, and right up into its fitting. Good. Pretty much the opposite on this side, right? Same thing. Good, let's get these wheels installed and pressurizer and then go test it out. And I trust that there's going to be no leaks. I have not done a leak test on it, but I think it's going to be fine. Oh yeah. Up she goes. Sweet. We were 45 3/4 back here, so I think we were 45 1/4 here. We are now about an inch higher, 46 1/4 at 40 psi. So let me just lower it back down to the recommended 5 psi and see how she does there. That we'll go back out and hook it up to that trailer and take it for a run and see what kind of adjustments we need to make for that. All right, so here we are. First ride opinions. Just pulled out of the neighborhood. Like I said, it's got the 10 psi in it. It might have lifted it up about a half an inch. Practically level with the front now, more or less. And I don't feel really any difference. Yep, I don't feel really much difference at all. So we're just on the road, a little bit of potholes, a little bit of rough roads. I'm gonna turn off onto an off-road snowpack trail here in a minute. I mean, it might feel a slight bit firmer, but not really noticeably firmer. It's not jarring or anything. It's pretty nice. So that'll be a pretty huge benefit just for overall ride stability and quality. I can feel it kind of bouncing a little bit. I can feel it responding to the bumps a little bit more. So I think it's going to kind of work those shocks a little bit more, maybe. Okay, that road's completely muddy. We're not going to go up that road. And as you can tell, those shocks that I have installed are probably pretty well shot. At least the exterior is shot, so probably would not hurt to get some new shocks put on this thing. I've got the compressor in the back. I think we're going to add a little bit more air pressure to it. Bring it up to maybe 15 or 20 psi and see how it handles that just riding by itself. Nice rough road. Nice bumpy bumpies, not uncomfortable at all. Almost no difference in the feel, just perhaps a little bit more sporty, I would say. And my old suspension without them probably was so tired and worn out that it was just kind of soft and saggy anyway. So there we go. This is just at the 10 psi, almost no extra. It has not really expanded hardly at all. Add a little bit of pressure. Okay, there's 20 psi. Again, almost no noticeable expansion. Oh, I guess a little bit, especially on the front end there. So we'll see how she rides. So now up to 20 PSI, it's a bit more firm, I'd say, but it's not really body jarring or anything like that. I wouldn't even necessarily say it's an unwelcome firmness. So there you go. 20 PSI, I don't see there ever being a reason to run it higher than that, unless I'm loading it down. So let's pull over to that trailer. All right, so just out of curiosity, I just filled it up to 75 PSI. Not that I'll ever ride around with it like that, and probably never have the trailer riding around like that, but just to kind of get an idea of how high it'll actually lift the truck off in this case. And it really didn't lift it more than about the 45 3/4. And so I don't think this thing's really ever going to be capable of jacking up the rear much. You know, it's not like it serves a purpose as a lift kit to lift your truck higher. It doesn't have a whole lot of range of motion. So that's good. We don't want it to do that. We just want it to support the weight. And cruising around here, all these bumps, it feels quite a bit more firm in the back, but it doesn't really feel, again, like body jarringly stiff. So right on. All right, so we're cruising around now with the trailer on, about 75 PSI. And no load, obviously, on the trailer, but it feels a bit more firm in the back, but not too bad. I just don't know what guys are cruising around with 75 to 100 PSI in these things. I don't think that's a very common practice, but, and I'm kind of leery about putting in 100 PSI because that's supposedly what the max is, and I just would hate to blow out my lines, fittings, or airbags on the first day. So I think I'll stick with the 75 for now. But let's pull over here and take some measurements. Okay, so I let all the pressure out. She's squatting like she used to. We're gonna go over there and we're gonna top it back up. No air pressure in it. She's sitting at about 43 in the back. On this uneven parking lot, at least. And about 45 in the front. So 2-inch difference. Oh man, that's awesome. It's probably about all the pressure I have in this air compressor right now anyway. Okay, we'll call it 80. Oh yeah, it's definitely a lot more normal, a lot more proper. And it might not be completely even, but it should be enough to affect the headlights being normal and tracking true down the road. Okay, so back up to right at about 45 now. So we got our 2 inches back. And this here's just showing 45 and a half, so that'll do it for me. So thanks for following along on yet another vlog style truck parts install on the Toyota channel. I'll tell you what, we've got a lot more activity over on the farm channel. So if you're interested in seeing what else has really been going on, now that I haven't had a whole lot of time to work on Toyota trucks and go wheeling in the trucks, head on over and check out that channel. Probably do a full review of the new trailer I got, and that's where I'll be. So thanks for watching. We'll see you on the next one.